2 weeks ago I set myself a challenge, play Diablo 4 for 50 hours and do a review on it, and now that objective is complete. Now I know many other content creators out there have already smashed the game for 100 hours and already got to level 80 or 100, so why would you even bother to listen to my late review? Well, I think my review will be unique in the sense that it's from the perspective of a total noob to the ARP genre. I mostly spend my allocated gaming hours playing classic World of Warcraft. So this has been a very interesting and fresh experience for me, and I know many of my audience will be unsure of purchasing the game because, like the old me, you don't really know what Diablo 4 is all about, apart from the fact that it's made by the same company who made WoW, and it's got demons and stuff. I really didn't expect the Diablo fanbase to be as big as it is, because in my classic Andy brain, I was thinking why on earth would people still play a game with a top-down camera view? But the truth is, many people still do, and I definitely now understand why. It's been a long wait for Diablo fans, so as you can imagine, when Blizzard announced Diablo 4, many gamers were as excited as Boris Johnson when he sees another Japanese child that he can rugby tackle. But did the game actually live up to the hype? Why is there such a disparity between critic and user scores, and was the monetization model of the game as shameless as we all predicted? Well, we'll dive into everything in this video, covering the following topics: story and atmosphere, gameplay, character development, min-max systems, monetization, and lastly, we'll talk about the endgame. Now, I promise my evaluation of the story will be spoiler-free. Overall, I think the story was high quality because it did genuinely subvert my expectations and surprise me in a good way and not in a cringy forced way. The story at its core was archetypically basic, but this isn't necessarily a bad thing. I almost think that the world of media in the past decade has tried too hard to be stylistic and unusual. So going back to the heart of high fantasy themes of good heroic characters bonding together to fight evil, weirdly means that Diablo 4 feels more original and more of a breath of fresh air. Power fantasy is also dealt with very well. This is one of the things done very poorly in games like Hogwarts Legacy, where you're constantly getting smoke blown up your backside about being the chosen one, and honestly was the main reason I was put off a game and I haven't played it since the launch. Your character has a connection to the main antagonist that allows you to see visions of her actions, which makes you important to the plot, but you never feel like some overpowered god with chosen one powers, especially as the difficult boss fights can be very humbling at times. Your characters and the friends that you make along the way are on a quest to stop the antagonist Lilith from rising to power, and you actually fail in this task quite a lot. She always seems to be one step ahead of you, which inevitably makes the climax of this storyline very satisfying, but I'm obviously not going to reveal exactly what happens, that would be a huge spoiler, but know this: it was one of those moments where your hairs genuinely stick up on the back of your neck. The motivations of Lilith are interesting and believable, to the point where you start to question whether she has a point despite how evil she is. This is a refreshing change, as most video game bad guys just want to destroy the world for no apparent reason. Another unique aspect of Diablo is the sinister and gory atmosphere it illustrates with its world and cinematics. This game does not hold back on making your stomach churn. I think the highlight for me was when a monk was being chewed to death by wolves. I can see how his flesh is being torn away on such a level of detail. You can see teeth marks in his stretchy muscle tissue. The bad guys in Diablo 4 are just on a different level of evil compared to other games that I've played. Lilith makes Sargeras look as evil as an infant pygmy marmoset monkey. I've also had an interest in theological themes from Christianity about angels and demons, so if that's your kind of thing, it's definitely going to light your candle. By the way, the support I've been getting from you guys on these longer videos has been utterly insane, and I really appreciate it, so to give back, I'm going to do a big Diablo 4 giveaway in this video. How would you guys like a Diablo 4 Collector's Edition box, a hoodie, t-shirt, a baseball cap, and a Diablo 4 mug? All you have to do is subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below, and one lucky person will win all of these items worth around $250. When you win the giveaway, I will reply on my main account. You will just see the name Metagoblin with a verified tick. Anyone else with my profile picture and a different version of my name is trying to scam you. We get a lot of these when we do giveaways, so be careful. And be sure to turn on notifications for comment replies, otherwise you won't see me reply to the comment and you will miss out. So for my journey, I decided to play the Barbarian. I would have played the Necromancer as I really enjoyed it on the beta, but Blizzard decided to nerf the minions and make them as useful as a chocolate fireguard. And even though I'm an ARPG noob, I played the game on veteran mode, and I'm definitely glad I did because tier 1 difficulty would have been way too easy. The noticeable difference of playing the Barbarian was the challenge to survive, as you have a lot less self-healing abilities than the Necromancer, and also as a melee, you always have to be up close and personal, which obviously puts you at higher risk of taking damage, but I definitely have no regrets picking a Barbarian because this increased the challenge in the game and meant that I had to min-max more to optimize my character. I couldn't just cheese the game by picking gear upgrades and not using any of the gear improvement services in major towns. I had to upgrade my gear often and optimize my gem usage, and whenever I went back into the open world after I tuned up, it was extremely satisfying to reap the benefits of my strategic thinking to improve my character. This also extends into the talent system. I used the Mobalytics app as a starting point. I know I've been sponsored to promote that app in previous videos, but it was genuinely very useful software. And I'm not sponsored currently to say this in the video, so you know that I wasn't shilling it. But in the end, I made my own build, because I definitely think if you're a Diablo rookie and a Barbarian rookie, you need to get the barrier ability. Not only does it prevent a lot of incoming damage, but if you take the right talents, it heals you also. The gameplay of a Barbarian and the Necromancer is overall incredibly fun, satisfying and addictive. I went for a rending dot-based build with Lunging Strike. The aim of the game is to build Fury with Lunging Strike, which is a great ability also to evade enemies and then burn that Fury with Rend for insane AoE bleed damage. Barrier was also very important to allow my character to burst his damage and to survive boss abilities. I also got Rupture for even more healing, and it also applies more bleeds while erupting the current bleeds on the target, kinda similar to how the Death Knight works in Legion. And my evasive ability was Leap to avoid boss mechanics and getting swarmed by ads. I might actually make a build guide for what I went for because I think it's generally very good for beginners to Diablo for its survivability. The story quests were also incredibly interesting and fun. The only disappointment for me was that there was no dialogue options. Your character just had default dialogue. I'm guessing this is just a characteristic of Diablo games, but for me personally, I've always enjoyed being able to change how the story plays out slightly in an RPG game because that adds to replayability. What was impressive, however, was how the cinematics, and especially how they transitioned from gameplay into cinematics. This was seriously impressive because it felt so natural and didn't break your immersion, when the cinematics didn't lag anyway, because honestly most of the time the cinematics were very glitchy, which was very weird, and I experienced serious FPS drops, and I have a 4070 Ti, so it's definitely not a hardware problem. The side quests on the most part weren't just boring MMO styled fetch and grind quests, but occasionally had a mini interesting story which provided just that extra push of great world building. It has been enough to incentivize me to research and watch videos on Diablo lore, because it's definitely very original, immersive and engaging. What I liked about the dungeons was how they weren't just a grind to go floor to floor like many other games. They contained inventive little objectives for you to complete in order to progress the dungeon until you finally get to the last boss. The boss reveals always fill you with excitement and a little dread, because at first you have no idea what you're up against, and there's just so many dungeons to do, and they are also randomized, so even doing the same dungeon twice won't feel the same. There's also many fun open world events, kind of similar to the Scourge Invasion event in WoW. You will see red circles on the map that have a variety of different objectives that you need to complete. Sometimes it's a demon invasion, preventing a big demon from absorbing other demons, protecting NPCs from dying, and many more. In fact, there's 13 different types of events with a random chance to spawn. The fact that there's 13 also probably isn't a coincidence. These reward good XP and loot. There's also bigger Legion invasion events with many more demons and elite enemies. Everyone in the world can see these before they occur, which means there's normally loads of players at this event. This is extremely fast-paced, demon-massacring action that rewards even better XP and loot. There's also these little sellers in the game that reward you for your exploration with some decent loot. There are a number of world events called strongholds, that is essentially a mini quest to liberate a stronghold and turn into a town once again. These also unlock more teleport locations around the map, to which there are actually many in the game, along with having a mount that you unlock later in the game. You do get around pretty quickly, it never feels like your travelling process is a boring slog. Luckily, while I was in the process of writing the script, I quickly managed to jump into a group with my friends to do some dungeons and world content together. Now, the more people you have in a group, the more challenging the content becomes, similar to how the game Borderlands scaled. The game is also astonishingly streamlined in helping you play with your friends. It doesn't matter if your friends are a few levels ahead or a little below, because everything scales to make it balanced. The only time this is really an issue is when your friends get way too far ahead and start doing Torment difficulty content, because the jump up in difficulty from Nightmare to Torment is pretty insane. Moving on to character development now. If you're an RPG nerd who likes complex systems, talents, min-max systems, Diablo 4 definitely has you covered. It is incredibly satisfying building your character in this game. The talent system at first can be quite overwhelming and feels overcomplicated and endless, but you don't really need to worry about this, because as you progress through the game it becomes easier to understand, and eventually the talent builds kind of feel small. The level of customizability is boundless. There's so many different builds you can go for and customize. I would encourage you to experiment with all the abilities available and make your own tailored build to what you find is fun. Just make sure it's not terrible. But you'll only find that out with guides and a little trial and error. Along with talent, you get an expertise system. Barbarian have weapon specialization, kind of similar to how weapon specs work in the arms tree for warrior in WoW. There will be different bonuses depending on what weapon you pick. You can also choose what abilities will use certain weapons. The Necromancer can also choose what minions to summon, what buffs to give those minions, and there's also an option to just sacrifice them to buff your character instead. The only element I really don't like about the game is gear. This is probably just because of my classic Andy brain. I'm sure you would get used to how Diablo 4 gear works eventually, but I just think the stats are very weird and wild. First of all, there's so many different stats in the game, they're technically called affixes. It could be quite overwhelming. I think there's at least over 30 in the game. Plus it's weird how only certain gear pieces can have certain stats. My classic Andy brain just wants a primary stat, a health stat, and 2 secondary stats. I do appreciate how there's a lot of original and fun design elements going on with stats, but I would just have preferred a more streamlined system. However, one good thing about it is, with more randomness going on, it does leave more room for customizability. I just think as a classic WoW player, it's going to take a little getting used to. What I definitely prefer in Diablo 4 over classic WoW is the number of min-max systems to optimize your gear, and obviously make your character more powerful. I really miss how in Mists of Pandaria you could upgrade and reforge your gear. And in Diablo, you can do so much more. You can upgrade your gear with resources taken from dismantling gear that you don't need. You can add sockets, craft gems to make it more powerful, and then put those gems on your gear. You can re-roll the stats on gear, and you can extract legendary aspects to use on a different piece of gear. There's a lot going on here, but there's also not too much that it becomes hard to understand and boring. I think Blizzard have hit that perfect sweet spot of simplicity and strategy. There's also a simple alchemy system where you can upgrade your health potions and make elixirs to increase your resistance to damage. But now it is time to get our hands dirty and wade our way through the swamp that is Blizzard Entertainment's monetization strategy. So the game is 60 bones, $70 in freedom units. It's an incredibly hefty price tag. Diablo 4 has become one of the first pioneers of this inflated retail value. But is it justifiable? If you only want to play Diablo 4 for the story and don't want to do much of the multiplayer content, then the game is worth around $30 to $40. So if you're that person, I would honestly wait for the game to be on sale because it's not really worth the money, but you might be waiting a while. If you're going to play Diablo 4 for countless weeks, you will probably get your money's worth. There's definitely enough in this game to keep you busy for a while, and we will cover that in the endgame section. But what totally throws this on its head is how there's an insanely bad whale hunting cosmetic cash shop in the game. If you're going to have a cash shop, then the retail value of the game should be cheaper. But Blizzard have exploited the fact that Diablo PC fans have waited so long for a new installment to the best of their ability, because they're going to pay for it anyway. And don't get me started on the pointless Ultimate Edition that everyone bought because they wanted early access. Another sad thing about the cash shop is how there's a currency system to purchase the cosmetics, and as you probably guess, the value of the cosmetics are always conveniently not close to the different tiers of currency that you can buy. Basically, you will always have to buy more currency than you need, and you will always have some left over, but the amount left over won't be enough to buy another set, so you have to buy more. And personally, I don't really understand the point of buying cosmetics for an ARPG. You're so zoomed out you can barely even see your character's armour anyway. Mounts are somewhat understandable, but the problem is that the cosmetic gear mounts look way better than anything in game. So it's the same old story, because the devs make more money on paid cosmetics, in-game cosmetics that you can earn naturally by playing the game, on the most part, look much worse. I mean, fair enough, a lot of the gear in-game does look pretty cool, but the problem is, you're given really bland colour sets to dye the gear with. So yeah, the cosmetic stuff just always looks better. And on top of this, the cosmetics that you get with the ultimate version of a game are utterly pointless. I mean, some of them aren't even for Diablo 4. Oh, and if you buy the collector's edition, you don't actually get the game, it doesn't include the game. And on top of all this, there's a season pass for the game that is purely cosmetic based, though not content based. So you don't need to pay for the content that is going to unlock at least. You see, I wouldn't be mad if this game costs $50 and had no in-game shop, but just a cosmetic season pass instead. But it's painfully obvious that Blizzard are just whale hunting with their monetization model, because there are people out there who will just buy everything because they're so rich that spending £100 feels like £10 for them. It's basically free money printing for them. I suppose if the devs release consistent, high quality, fresh and interesting content, and possibly even a new game mode like Instance Raid similar to Lost Ark, over the course of the next year, then I will be a little less disappointed with Blizzard's insanely shameless monetization model. But at the end of the day, the big whale hunting strategy will always make me feel sick inside, and means I will never give a Blizzard game a solid 9 out of 10. Which is a shame really, because I do think Diablo 4 does have the potential to be a 9 out of 10 game. So I honestly didn't have a lot of time to experience much of the endgame content, but luckily my friend Alex has played it extensively, so what I just did is I interviewed him and exploited him for information instead, because that's what true friends do. At first the endgame can feel complicated, but once you've stuck your teeth into it, you do realise, to be honest, it's pretty simple objectives. The most unique endgame content has to be Helltide events. These are similar to Legion Invasion events in the Legion pre-patch. Hordes of evil demons turn up and you have to wipe them out. But there's a twist. Currency drop from these demons is used to unlock chests in that area that reward some of the best gear in the game. The only problem is if you die, you lose half of your currency. So the idea is to farm as many points as you can, unlock as many chests as you can, while also trying to survive. It's a high risk, high reward game mode. The great thing about Helltides is that they are in the open world, and they are best done with friends. This makes Diablo 4 a very social game, because you inevitably end up grouping up with people to make your life easier, which could obviously lead you into joining a clan. Because this game just simply is better experience when grinding the content in a group.
It's got that nice feel to the world like classic WoW did. That's definitely a pro.
You don't need to worry about your friends not playing the game.
No, it's definitely, you could definitely play it solo, but I will say this, the game is nowhere near as fun when you're playing solo.
There's also Nightmare Dungeons, a very difficult version of dungeons that you will see levelling up. The main purpose of doing them is to get certain legendary aspects because there are the most instrumental things to collect to improve player power. And similar to Mythic Plus dungeons in Retail WoW, the Nightmare Dungeons can continue to advance in difficulty. The other two things you have to do at Endgame is farm Renown and Altars of Lilith. Now these are probably the most boring elements of Diablo 4 Endgame, especially farming the altars, because you're doing nothing but running around collecting them, and you have to do it because they permanently increase your stats even for your alts and provide a renown reward. It's so much of an issue that the game is a bit grindy and boring. I know this is how ARPGs function, but the game definitely doesn't need to be as grindy as it is. The game feels a little too grindy and therefore more boring than it has to be, which can inevitably cause burnout. Alex hasn't actually played the game for a week because he did get burnt out, and because his friends took over him in progress, it meant he would have to continue doing the grind solo, which is even more boring. In one way, Diablo 4 is more boring to play alone, and that's also weirdly a good thing in another way because it means you don't always have to play the game with other people. The content is doable alone. So you're sorted if you don't like people or you can't find a group. But I think the overall consensus of people playing Diablo right now is you're not getting the most out of a game playing solo. The problems of Diablo 4 are further aggravated when you enter the world of creating an alt, because this game is not alt friendly.
So the worst thing about Diablo is that it's not alt friendly. It is one of the worst games I've played for being alt friendly.
Fair enough, when you make a new character you can skip the story, but there isn't anywhere near enough catch-up systems for alts. You'll have to farm all the renown all over again. There definitely should be a boost to this on alt characters, and because Altars of Lilith provide such a good renown bonus, you will probably have to do them all over again, and nobody just wants to do the same boring content over and over again more than once. This was one of the major criticisms of TBC Classic, the need to do achievements on alt characters.
But you still have to collect all the renown that's taken you days, if not weeks, to grind, especially for the casual gamer. You have to do all that again on your alt. You have to basically collect all the Altar of Liliths again, even though they're not increasing your stats. You have to do them anyway, because they give you so much renown. So you have to do them.
During the last parts of the interview, we talked about glitches and bugs. One issue we seem to experience quite frequently was being randomly kicked from the game. And when this happens, you can't log in for ages for some bizarre reason, and when you do actually finally get back into the game, if you're in the middle of a dungeon, all your progress will be lost and you'll be ported back to the closest town. And the same went for quests, even main story quests, right? I had to do this certain quest in the swamp 3 times because of disconnect issues, which was very frustrating. I don't understand why the game can't just log you back in to the closest respawn point, you know, the place that you go to when you die. Just put me back there and let me crack on with the quest. So it's time we collected our thoughts. If I was to rate this game, I would give it a solid 7 out of 10. The main story was S tier. I enjoyed every moment of it. It really did engage me and encourage me to learn more about the Diablo world. And at some point when I have some more free time, I think I'll definitely go back and play the other games. Let me know in the comment section if that's something you'd be interested in and whether I should make some content about that. But the single player experience of this game is totally overpriced. To truly get your money's worth, you would have to be very keen to experience the end game social multiplayer content that the game has to offer. Because this content is very entertaining and has a lot of replayability, I think most people will be able to enjoy Diablo for months, especially as they plan to release new content. The downsides of the game really lie in the greedy monetization that we have honestly come to expect from Blizzard, so they're definitely not redeeming themselves with Diablo 4, which is a shame because without all the greedy elements, I think they had the potential to receive a more prominent positive response from the community. Because at the end of the day, they've made an absolutely solid game here. I would have given it a 9.5 out of 10, but it's impossible to do that with such greedy systems lurking in the background. The game also definitely isn't alt-friendly, but I imagine in the future Blizzard will introduce patch changes to mitigate the boredom experience when making alt characters. And I suppose the glitches were minor, but honestly, the main issues that I had was group content like Hell Tides and Legion Invasion events. The servers really do feel incredibly laggy and unstable most of the time, Me and my friends all experienced the lag, so it definitely wasn't just me. It's definitely not as bad as it was in the beta, but it's still definitely a genuine issue. But anyway, I think I'm going to go and drink some honey tea or something because I think my vocal cords are about to snap. That was Diablo 4. The first impressions of Diablo 4 from the perspective of a total classic Andy person. Until my next video, ciao.